Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear viewers, welcome to Huda Tonight segment number 3. Huda Tonight is bringing you live programs which you can only see on your favorite channel, Huda TV. Now, this segment is slightly different to what we normally present. Today we're going to be talking about a very beautiful country, a country which is rich in history and has a very dominant Islamic environment. But before we do that, dear viewers, I would like to encourage you to give us your phone calls, your thoughts and your feedback on the number that's running across your screen so that we can hear your feedback and your comments and questions, of course. At the same time, I encourage you to visit our Facebook page and give us your contributions there. And you can also find us on Twitter where we give regular updates on programs. And finally, you can tune into our YouTube channel where you can find our programs. So if you ever missed a program and you want to catch up, that's the place to do it. Or if you want to watch a repeat, you want to learn from the experiences or the answers that people have given, you can always go to our YouTube channel and catch up with the programs there. Okay, so now let's come back to the program about Indonesia. We have a very exciting program where we're going to look at the history of Indonesia, where we're going to look at the food and the sport and the different environments that we find within this very beautiful country. So before we do that, let's introduce our guests. We have with us Brother Mujaddid, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Who is a graduate of Al-Azhar Sharif. I'd like to welcome you to the program. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu wa rahmatullah.
And with us we have also Brother Lukman, who is a graduate also from Al-Azhar Sharif and is, inshallah, if I'm correct in understanding, you'll be beginning a master's program.
Yes, actually, I'm trying postgraduate here because I already finished my college in my country.
Okay, excellent. Brother Lukman, I'd like to welcome you to the program. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
And am I correct in understanding both of you are from Indonesia?
Yes, correct. Definitely, 100%.
100%, okay. Okay, Brother Majid, let's begin with yourself. Could you give us some insight into how Islam actually came to Indonesia?
Yeah, it's Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's interesting. Many what do you say, scientists, historian,
Right.
Historians say that Islam came in Indonesia in 8th century.
Okay.
No, which is different from many places, other countries in Islamic world. It came through first trade and culture. So, yeah, that's why it made our Islamic culture is really different.
Okay.
Yeah, we tend to be more tolerant.
Okay, good. So you have the mixture of trade there. Brother Lukman, the brother said that Islam came through trade. What are the main commodities or the main things that people buy from Indonesia?
Okay, actually, I would like to start about the history of Indonesia. Actually, our civilization was not Islamic totally. It was sort of Hindus, Buddhist civilization. In the first century, Hinduism and Buddhism, Hindus people and Buddhist people were coming from India, Southeast India, and they were migrating to our country, and they started calling people to adopt their religion, and Indonesian people or indigenous people accepted their religion. And then
sorry, Brother Lukman, so before you mentioned Islam came to Indonesia, what were the predominant faith in Indonesia?
Actually, animism. So they sort of have belief that everything has soul that can influence.
Oh, really?
Yes, their life.
Oh.
So they had sort of this belief, and then Islam later on came to Indonesia, and it is said Islam came in Indonesia in the time of the third caliph, Uthman ibn Affan.
Okay, mashallah. So it's actually a very long
but
time ago.
but
Very
but the
long time ago.
development
Right.
of Islam in this time is not very significant, and later on in the 13th century, Muslim trader from Persia and India started coming to our country. Later on, Arab trader were coming to our country, and then they started teaching Islam, and the people accepted Islam because they don't force the people to follow their belief. They just show a good behavior.
Okay.
They were making trading very good. They didn't do sort of interest or usury that we have. So most people were interested in knowing what kind of belief that they have, and then they finally accepted Islam, and Islam were growing very significantly until today.
MashaAllah. So we can give the good news for the Arab traders who dealt with Islamic principles.
Yes.
And this is what encouraged many Indonesians to embrace Islam.
Yes, and actually we have many historical account. You know, one of the European historian by name Marco Polo, when he was visiting China, some historians said he must first visit Indonesia because he could not visit China without visiting Indonesia.
Okay.
And later on, Western people were interested in making trading with the China, and they were starting sort of curious to know about Asian land, and Marco Polo must have visited Indonesia. And also we have sort of Ibn Battuta, Moroccan traveler, and he wrote Rihlah Ibn Battuta. This was very famous book.
He visited Indonesia.
Yes, and he said that when I was visiting Indonesia, I knew a king of Samudra Pasai by name King Soleh. He was very zeal to practice Islam, and in that time the Islamic school of thought or madhab that he followed was Shafi'i. This is why you will know that most Indonesian people are following the school of Shafi'i.
Okay, that's very interesting to note that you gave us a very good and brief history of Indonesia. Brother Mujaddid, I want to ask you, Indonesia has a history of trade. What does Indonesia offer the world? Why do people come to Indonesia? What do they buy and what do they enjoy there?
Yeah. What do you say that in English? Rempah-rempah?
Spice.
Spice. Spice. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Generally spice.
Okay,
Yes.
so the main export of Indonesia is spice.
Yes, spice.
Okay, good. And is rice another export of Indonesia?
At the ancient time, well, I think it's just spice.
Okay, good. Could I ask you then, Brother Lukman, we're still talking about history.
Yes.
I want to move forward a little bit and look at the time of colonialization.
Yes.
Europe entered into Indonesia. Which country from Europe went to Indonesia and how long were they there for?
Actually, the first colonialism in Indonesia was started by Portuguese, and later on Dutch was knowing Indonesia and was interested in colonizing Indonesia, and that started coming in Indonesia in the 17th century, and Dutch colonized Indonesia 3.5 century, a long time.
350 years.
Yes.
Subhanallah. That's a long time.
Very long.
Although we were Muslim or we are Muslim, but Dutch people didn't give us sort of freedom to to have access education for Indonesian people, although they allow us to read the Quran, but they didn't allow us to read the translation of the Holy Quran. And you know, we are not Arab, and it is difficult for us to understand the Quran without knowing Arabic language. So the Dutch people, you can read the Quran, but you cannot translate the Quran. Just understand the Quran in Arabic, and we don't have any access to understand Quran in Arabic except by studying Arabic.
Of course.
And in the time we didn't have any translation of the Holy Quran. How could we understand our religion?
Okay.
And also, Dutch people just allow access of education for the upper people. So for the lower people, you could not study in any school.
So there was, due to the Dutch, there was a restraint. Brother Mujaddid, if I could ask you, the effect of the Dutch with growth of Islam in Indonesia was a problem. Is that correct?
Yes, because Islam encouraged people to fight against the colonialism.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, in year 47,
Right.
47, a scholar, namely Hashim Ash'ari,
Okay.
was the leader of the Nahdlatul Ulama, the biggest Islamic organization
Okay.
up till now. He made a fatwa that that encouraged people to do jihad fisabilillah against the
Dutch.
not the Dutch, the English at the time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the English also entered Indonesia.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. The English.
Okay. Brother Mujaddid, he touched on a very important point about social organizations inside of Indonesia. He mentioned one particular one,
Nahdlatul Ulama.
Nahdlatul Ulama. Is there any other ones which are very popular or active in Indonesia?
Actually, we have many Islamic organizations, but I would like to mention the two biggest Islamic organizations in Indonesia.
Please.
The first is Muhammadiyah. This Islamic organization was founded in 1912 by Kiai Ahmad Dahlan. When we mention Kiai, Kiai simply means religious teacher, or we call it in Arabic Sheikh, something like that. And he was going to pilgrims to Mecca, and then they start learning Islam from many Islamic scholars around the world. And you know that one of the Islamic scholars that shaped his life, that influenced his life, is Muhammad Abduh, the Islamic reformer from Egypt. When he was reading his Tafsirul Manar, and also his magazine by the same name, Al-Manar, he was sort of influenced with this Islamic reformer or figure. And then he came to Indonesia and started teaching Islam, introducing Islam in order to understand Islam in the better way, and to go back to the Quran and Sunnah that are the fundamental sources for Islam. And the second organization is Nahdlatul Ulama.
Right.
The Nahdlatul Ulama is very traditional organization. They have sort of pesantren, we call it in our language. Pesantren meaning the place of santri. Santri is Islamic student.
Right.
So all of students in our country who want to learn about Islam, they learn it in the pesantren, sort of Islamic missionary
Islamic schools, you can
yeah,
say, right?
Islamic school, Islamic
Okay.
boarding school, something like that.
Okay, so just a place where one can memorize Quran
Uh,
and learn the basics of Islam.
And this organization, Nahdlatul Ulama, has a huge adherents or follower. Maybe it's probably considered the biggest Islamic organization in the world because
Subhanallah.
we are Muslim, we are Indonesian, and Indonesia has a huge population, and we are considered the largest Islamic country in the world today.
I read actually the figure something above 202 million Muslims.
250 million, 88% of our population
Are Muslims.
are Muslims.
Okay, Brother Mujaddid, this brings us to another very important point which I would like for you to explain to the viewers. Could you tell us a bit about the demographics of Indonesia, the different faiths that are in Indonesia, and who is the majority and who is the minority?
No, it's very clear that the majority are Muslims.
Okay.
Yeah, but we share countries along with Christian,
Okay.
Hinduist, Buddhist, of course, and the traditional Chinese religion, Confucius,
Confucianism.
Confucianism.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and the majority of us, like you said, Muslim. The next question to that would be, how do these different groups get along? I mean, do they all work very easily with the Muslims?
Yeah, in fact, when I was younger, when I was a children, I went to same place. I share class with children from the Chinese ethnic, and of course they embrace Christian,
Okay.
either Christian or Hinduism or Buddhism. Yeah, and we play together, we study together. There is no any problem between me or them, nor between me or them, neither between our parents. No, there is no any difference.
This is beautiful because Islam teaches us tolerance and teaches us to accept other people's faiths. And if this is the case, then Indonesia is a prime example
Alhamdulillah.
of the practical aspects of Islam.
Alhamdulillah.
Very nice, mashallah. Brother Lukman, this brings us to another subject, which is talking about religious freedom.
Yes.
These minority groups inside Indonesia, are they able to freely practice their religion?
Definitely.
And more importantly, are the Muslims in Indonesia able to practice their religion?
Yes. I would like to say that actually our constitution guarantees that all citizens has the right to practice their religion. And 5 basic of our country, we call it Pancasila. Pancasila simply means 5 basic. The first principle of the Pancasila says that believe in one supreme God.
Okay.
It means that if you want to live in Indonesia, you have to have faith. And our constitution guarantees that there are 6 religions admitted by our government.
Okay.
This is why Christians, Buddhism, Hinduism, Confucianism, they have right to practice their religion. And actually, we don't have any problem with the minorities. We as Muslims give their freedom to live among us, to practice their religion. This is what our founding father want. So I think all people in our country have freedom of religion.
Okay, very nice. Brother Mujaddid, just highlighting on that, I'd like to hear your view as well. On Muslims in Indonesia, are Muslims freely, openly able to practice their religion, or are there
Definitely.
some boundaries that they can't cross?
Boundary? I don't think so. We practice our religion very freely.
Okay, that's very nice. But unfortunately, in some countries, even though it's a Muslim country, Muslims are sometimes oppressed or not able to do certain things. But it sounds like, mashallah, that Indonesia is very open and allows people to practice their faith.
Yes,
Excellent. Okay, Brother Mujaddid,
Yes.
this brings me to another point. What's the role of Islamic law or the Sharia in practicing religious freedom?
Yeah,
in Indonesia?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Since our community, our Indonesian community, is very plural. There are not only Muslims. There are also we live along with the Christian, and other religious groups. So we cannot call our country as Islamic country or our constitution as Islamic constitution, but we adapt the
universal
universal value of Islam into our constitution.
Okay.
Yeah. So we don't call it's Sharia law. We don't call it. But basically, the Sharia law is being practiced in Indonesia, especially in
Aceh.
In Aceh.
Okay, you have Sharia courts
Yes.
in Aceh. That's very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And where do you live in Indonesia?
I live in East Java.
East
Okay.
Java. In Java.
East Java,
East Java
but
also.
a different city.
Okay, actually, when I was reading about Indonesia, one of the amazing facts was that actually Indonesia consists of over, I don't know how many different islands.
70,000 and few hundred
70, yes.
island.
Okay, so I mean, for me, who's never seen or been there, it's very difficult to actually understand. So where do most of the people actually live? Which is the most heavily populated parts of
Java.
Java.
Okay. Okay, very interesting.
Mm.
There is also one other interesting fact, brother Lukman. Indonesia was also one of the wonders of the world. It was said that one of the biggest Buddhist temples
Yes.
is in Indonesia. Borobudur.
Yes, Borobudur.
Okay. So what's the significance or the history behind this?
And actually, as I said before, that Hinduism came to Indonesia in the 1st century, and Buddhism came in Indonesia between 1st and 2nd century. And as I said to you, that actually they were coming from India.
Okay.
And then they introduced their religion to our people, and our people accepted their religion, and they started to have sort of kingdom. And according to the history, there were two big empire in our country. The first is Sriwijaya in our language we call it. This is the first Buddhist empire.
Okay.
And this empire had many influences, whether it is in the part of Indonesia and out of the border in Indonesia. And it is said that part of the Malaysia, a country that is neighboring to our country, was under the control of this empire. And then this empire got declined, and after that the second empire of Hindu is Majapahit. Majapahit was empire in the East Java that I'm living right now, and this empire was very great also. And then Islam was starting to spread, and many of them follow the Islam by the Muslim trader. And
Okay.
I would like to say that actually Muslim trader, when they are calling people to Islam, they started to call the king. If the king accepted Islam, the common people will follow the king.
Of course.
So they started try to invite the king of the empire to embrace Islam, and then common people will follow this king. This and the second the second, how to say, the second approach that a Muslim trader or Muslim scholar, I should say, they got married to women, and then after getting married, of course, these women will follow her fate. So Islam coming into Indonesia by two approaches. The first is to let the king to accept Islam first, and the second sort of intermarriage between Muslim trader or between Muslim preacher and indigenous people.
Okay, good. We've given the history of Indonesia a good segment of time. We have, unfortunately, only a few minutes left. But in these few minutes, I want to talk about some of the more entertaining parts of Indonesia. Just very briefly, Brother Mujaddid, the equator runs through Indonesia. And this brings a lot of tourists over to your country. What kind of things do tourists do in Indonesia? What do you have available for them?
Oh, many.
Tell us.
Temples such as Borobudur.
Okay.
The Borobudur and the Prambanan.
Okay.
Prambanan. Also beaches.
Beaches.
There are so many beautiful beaches in our country, in Bali, in Ntb, in many places. Also diving sites.
Excellent.
Sea diving sites in Bunaken, Raja Ampat. There are so many places.
You are trying to convince me to go to Indonesia now.
Oh, indeed.
But there's one important thing that you have to convince me for before I go to Indonesia. Talk to me about the food.
Oh, food. Yeah, that is very interesting, since we are actually, there are so many tribes in Indonesia, and there are so many cities in Indonesia. The interesting part is that every city has their own food.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think the most famous one is rendang, which comes from the West Sumatra.
Okay.
The West Sumatra, yeah, rendang, and you should try rawon. It comes from my city.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I will wait for an invitation, and then hopefully I will come around and have an Indonesian
You're
meal
very
in
welcome.
Indonesia.
You are very welcome.
Thank you very much, guys. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of the program, and I would really like to thank you both for coming to the program.
You're welcome.
Brother Lukman, thank you very much for the history and the various aspects of Indonesia you informed us about. Thank you very much. Brother Mujaddid, thank you again. And you nearly convinced me of taking my next holiday to Indonesia. You never know, I might just be there. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Dear viewers, thank you very much for tuning in to the third segment of Huda Tonight, where we had a very friendly discussion and an informal, educational discussion about the history of Indonesia, the role Islam plays in Indonesia, and we finally concluded with agreeing that Indonesia will be a very good place to have a good holiday and have some nice spicy food. I think they have spicy food. But until then, see you on our next program, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.